Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Squid Game Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, we're picking up where the last episode left off, and we have Gi-hoon finding the little card, the key, as the salesman put it last episode, on him. And at the same time, you have Junho hearing the gunshots, busting into the building. Makes sense that there's no one there. Gi-hoon specifically bought the entire building just for that purpose. So I was not expecting to find, I think his name is like Soo Uyok or something like that. I don't remember his name. His name is like, because later on, Junho refers to him as like Mr. Choi. So we'll just call him Choi for now. But the fact is that I wasn't expecting him to be in the building, but I guess like, well, he told you what you needed to know, and you're like, well, I could kill you, but it wouldn't be sportsmanlike because you won the game. So I'm curious when it was all said and done, if the game with Ji-hoon had played out a little bit differently last episode, would he have killed the guy afterwards or not? Or would he just left him there? I don't know. Either way, Junho finds Gi-hoon on top of in front of the salesman's dead body and tries to arrest him. But luckily, Choi comes in for the save and knocks him out. And I love that Gi-hoon put the gun on him because it's like, whoa, I work for you. Remember, I send pictures to you. And I feel like there might be a deeper parallel you can think about, because I didn't bring this up last episode, but the way like his people mobilized in those vans and stuff last episode when they're going to those train stations is it's very much the same as like how like everyone got picked up in those vans for the games last season. So there's a parallel there. And then there's also this element of, Gi-hoon doesn't even recognize the faces of the people who work for him. It's so interesting that he calls out the game for being like, these people are just horses to you. It's like, to some extent, you're kind of doing the same thing. It's not fully equatable, but I feel like I'm wondering, is that a thread they're setting up this early on in the season to kind of carry on throughout that element of it. So I was like, I didn't think about that until just now, but it's like, yeah, these are people who work for you and they're kind of faceless, even though you see their faces all the time because they always take pictures of themselves and send it to you. But it's like, right, there's so many faces, so of course you're not going to remember them all, but it's still kind of, once again, I feel like there's a similar parallel to the people who wear the mask, because it's like, it doesn't matter who's below the mask. You're not supposed to know their identity. It feels intentional. So we'll see if that thread ends up getting pulled on and that comparison kind of gets made. But yeah, he had to prove himself. It's like, I was with Mr. Kim. I worked for him. I heard that you paid off your debt voluntarily, and I've been all about this. We were at the train station, yada, yada, yada. And then he sees the salesman that he's like, this bastard killed Mr. Kim, and that kind of struck a chord with Gi-hoon, because like this is probably like the first time he's lost anyone, even though it's like, right, this is some guy that was working for me. It's still a thing of, damn, someone else died, because he thought like maybe this is the first encounter. Well, he knew they got taken, so he wasn't sure, but probably thought like they were being held somewhere. That conversation sure as hell didn't come up last episode, but he didn't know what was going down. But Choi was like, I don't care, this bastard got what he deserved. So basically, Gi-hoon then has a sit down with Junho, asking him, they're exchanging information, and he's like, I was a cop. I was actually on the island. So I left it in the review because it's already like edited and uploaded. So I could always edit it on YouTube, but it's not that big of a deal. But I brought it up last episode. I was like, didn't Gi-hoon and Junho meet again on the island? Didn't he talk to him? But he was in disguise. And lo and behold, they refreshed our memory by being like, that did happen. So like I said, I thought I remember that happening. I just wasn't 100% sure. But either way, like I said, it's a moot point now. But he's like, I was on the island. And then Gi-hoon's like, do I have to kill you? But he was like, no, I was there looking for my brother. Remember that worker who asked about Inho? Yeah, that was me. That was me asking about my brother. So I was on that island with you. And he's like, yeah, the chaos that went down and everything. But once again, he never saw the aftermath of the game, so he didn't know if Gi-hoon had died. To be fair, like after, because he woke up like a year later, so Gi-hoon was probably like, what I'm saying is, Junho woke up like a year later from like his coma or whatever, so Gi-hoon probably did a lot to make himself disappear. At least, there are records, but he probably has enough money to kind of probably stay severely below the record, especially, if you'd been able to kind of probably socially and like maybe digitally and stuff like that, like paperwork wise, disappear to the naked eye unless you're like really like going out of way your look. So, but I guess with all the things that happened last season, Junho was just kind of like his investigation stalled. No one was really helping him at at major crime, so he just once again kind of went his own way with it. So. And I didn't talk about it last episode, but it comes up this episode too that Junho is not telling anyone that the front man is his brother, because it's like, oh, like that fellow officer from last episode being like, oh, did you see the guy who shot you? He was like, no. And this time Gi-hoon's like, right, the guy who wears the mask and the hood, like, did you ever see his face? He was like, no, I didn't. It's like, well, for one, you're trying to build up a rapport with Gi-hoon. So last thing you want to be is like, I'm not with them, but my brother is. Like, because he's not telling Gi-hoon what he discovered, that, hey, because there are connective dots here, there's information he has access to that Gi-hoon doesn't, that In-ho was a previous winner, and the winners, not always, but typically might have some ties to the game in some shape or form. So who knows what happened to all the other winners, but obviously he was a winner a couple years back, and now here he is as the front man. At some point in time, he got that, he took up that position and stuff, so. But yeah, that's very pertinent information that will kind of give Gi-hoon maybe a better understanding of this whole thing, to at least to some degree. Like, once again, he's missing a lot of information in that regard. So I don't think the frontman ever, I don't think In-ho ever said anything during their conversation in the season 1 finale. I don't think that information ever came up. So, like I said, he has his reasons and it's understandable. But the moment like Gi-hoon finds out, he's gonna be pissed. But I think it's also because Junho doesn't know what he's going to do with that. It's like, especially the stuff he says later on with his mom, which we'll get. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Because in the aftermath of all this, they decided to work together, right? So it's like, right, he even said, like, yo, I know stuff that you don't know. So maybe he told Gi-hoon some of that stuff. It was just off camera. But I think for Junho, he doesn't know what he wants to do, because he's asking, like, Gi-hoon, like, are you going to kill the guy? He's like, no. Like, even if I kill that guy, it doesn't matter. The games are still going to continue. They're just going to find someone else to fill that void, because the people really at the top are, as Junho tells him, like, yo, it's the VIPs. I've seen. He only saw one of the VIPs' face. Plus, they're not Koreans. They're like from different countries. So it's like you wouldn't be able to really know who they are. So, and most of them kept their mask on. You've only seen one of their faces, but you wouldn't be able to like properly identify them. Like, so I mean, that's kind of the point, right? But the VIPs are kind of at the tippity top of this, so like you have to kind of destroy the game. That's his plan. But even upon hearing that, once again, still the trust thing. We're building up trust. Last thing I need to do is tell you that's my brother. It's the frontman. So once again, extra reason not to tell him right now. But the reason why I was bringing that up in correlation, because we learn more about In-ho a little bit. We find out that his wife died because she was sick. I don't remember if they said cancer, or because cancer does come up in another capacity in the episode, but I don't remember. They might have just said a disease, but she died. And even their mom was like, hey, go to the grave. Maybe In-ho's been here if there's fresh flowers, but there were no fresh flowers when Junho got there. So it's like, right, his brother hasn't been back. Makes sense, because probably being in the position you're in means abandoning everything, your identity, all that you are, yada, yada, so on and so forth, right? So it's probably a thing of, I'm dead to the world regardless. So, but I mean, it's like no one knows that he's gone. It's just like, yeah, he's my, and his mom, we find out it's like In-ho is her stepson. So, and she feels a lot of guilt because she's like, I don't want him to ever feel like I have favorites, that you are my favorite, because it turns out In-ho gave one of his kidneys to Junho, but it's like when the time came to help In-ho's wife, we couldn't do anything. It's like, because Junho's like, we were struggling at the same time too, so it was a fucked situation all around. And she feels guilty because she's like, I should have done something more. But then Junho's like, well, if anyone's good to blame, it's me. He could have sold his kidney and used that money to pay for her, like, disease or whatever, but he gave it to me. So like, should I die? And she's like, no, you shouldn't. He's like, then stop saying that. Don't say that you should die. Yes, it sucks what happened, but it's just fate. He basically suffered the consequences of his actions because apparently he lost his job and everything because he took a bribe. So, or maybe like it's probably most likely lost his job, and I'm sure like shame, I mean corruption and crime follows you no matter what country you live in, but I'm sure like probably it's even harsher in Asian countries. Like it's a social stigma probably, so getting any work might not have been the easiest thing regardless. But yeah, so I think like it's my reason for bringing this up once again is just showing like Junho has such complicated things. Despite their relationship being what it is, he also feels this obligation and guilt to try and search out his brother. But it's also the element of you are the bearer of your own actions. Plus, there's also the aspect of he's behind these terrible games and done all these terrible things. It's like, right, like he was saying it just as much to himself as he was to his mother, maybe even more so to himself about. Right, like why am I trying to help save this person? He shot me. He's been responsible for so many people's death. He dragged so many people into these games. He's beyond reason. Like he has to, we shouldn't feel guilty considering he made his decision, and those decisions have been terrible and affected so many people and killed so many people. So, but it's still the thing of that's family, that's your brother, and especially like once again, this is the guy that gave you your kidney when you need it. It's just I'm sure like the scales of love and hate are just like balancing back and forth for him in this regard. Some other stuff, we find out that Gi-hoon is locked and loaded because it's like, right, we're not just going to be able to deal with these guys with just one pistol. It's like, no, Gi-hoon's got pretty much an armory, and I love that Junho was like, how doing these guns work? It's like, all right, let's go through this hole in the wall. Oh, there's a couple, to be fair, the entire place is its own, so bust it through some walls and then open fire. And it's like, yeah, I've been target practicing. It's like, right, from time to time, you might want to come in here to kind of get some gun practice in. You also might want to quit your job. It's like, this becomes a full-time thing, so you don't need a job. Plus, that's just going to get in the way. You're a cop, and you're going to feel obligated to try and do the right thing. But it's like, we don't need none of that here. It's just a pure vigilante thing we're doing. He also showed them the money. And it's like, right. He's like, you stick with me, you could get paid whatever you want. But obviously Junho was like, I'm not in this for the money. And so is Choi. Choi's like, no. Mr. Kim officiated my wedding. He was like a friend to me. Like, this is about payback. It's like, yo. But he's like, yeah, I could hook you up with the right people. Even later on, hire some ex-military people to serve him. It's like, yo, putting together a little squad. But even Gi-hoon recognizes like there's a good chance I won't come out of this alive. So I think that's why he's setting the stage for all that stuff throughout the episode. For example, going to see Sung-woo's mom and Se-byok's brother. And just like seeing how much he's grown and seeing that they're okay, seeing that she's got someone to take care of and he's got someone to take care of him and look after him and love him. And so Gi-hoon also goes and visits the guy that Se-byok was visiting, just trying to get her and her brother's parents. I think I'm conflating because I was about to say, like, isn't her dad dead? But I'm like, I think because her mom is the only one that came up in conversation. So, but I think they were trying to get both of their parents. Maybe they've only been able to track down the mom, but not the dad. Because the person, like, there was a girl from the Marbles episode, the girl that Se-byok ends up kind of having to, wins the game, and sadly she dies. It's like Se-byok had a friend. If I remember correctly, didn't that girl, like, I think she's the one that, like, killed her dad, I think, because he was abusive. I was like, I don't think that was Se-byok's story. I think that was hers. I think, if I remember correctly. Do correct me if I'm wrong. My point on bringing that diatribe is like because I couldn't remember like what Se-byok's situation was with her dad. Like I said, I think it was to bring both of her parents, but maybe it was just her mom. But it's like her mom's not in a well enough condition. It's like despite where she was at right now, she is like she never suffered any like mistreatment, so she needs to recover. And he's like, I'll go and we'll send I got experts in China and somewhere else. Maybe it was Japan. He's like, I got experts in other places who will like make sure she gets here. And Gi-hoon even offers to give him more money, but he's like, no, you giving me more than enough. Plus he's like, after the last time I talked to Se-byok, like I don't know if he's saying like based on the last time him and Se-byok reacted, where she was like, yo, give me this, if like, I'll hurt you if you don't, you know, either that or maybe the last time he interacted with Gi-hun about Sabiak, he's just kind of like, I owe it to her. And I was like, that's actually really sweet. So that was a very interesting development. And then there's a new client who shows up afterwards. I'm probably going to butcher her name because it's like No Eul. So I don't know if it's like Noel or Noel. I'm going to be probably like pronouncing it differently every single time. Her name is like, I think it's Kang Newell, but whatever the case may be. She shows up because she's looking for her child. She had a 1-year-old that's still in North Korea. And I love, he's like, no, it's not even about the money. He's like, if it was about the money, I would have asked about it sooner. He's also talking, because I guess he's doing a lot of more charitable stuff now, because he's like, oh, like, you know, he's like, here I am, like, oh, like kindness, you know, offers rewards or whatever. But it's like, yeah, finding a 1-year-old in North Korea is not the easiest thing, because it seems like she ended up killing her supervisor and then ended up like defecting to South Korea. And he's just trying to tell her, like, it might be easier if you just let go. He's like, I'm saying, I know this is messed up. He's like, I am a father myself. I get it. But it's like, there's only so much you can do and there's nothing more you can do. So that was kind of her entire focus, was that. So she ultimately ends up getting the card and you're like, oh, is she going to be a player? Which we'll talk about that later. And it's like, oh, like, how would this necessarily... Well, it's like, well, we know Sabiak was getting all the money to get her and her brothers, like, so she could get her brother, but also to get her parents. But I'm like, I mean, even that guy isn't even taking your money anymore and he can't really help you. So but I guess like you get enough money, you can get enough resources like Gi-hun has to kind of make things play out the way you want them to. So we find out more about Noel. She dresses up as like the bunny and gave that little girl the lollipop because she got overlooked. And that's kind of sad. And once again, I'm sure there's a deeper meaning. I mean, not even just in the context of the story, but I think there's an overarching thing. Because it's like, right, the only reason why the other kids were noticed is like, hey, they're here with their parents. Their parents are holding them. This little girl is low to the ground. No one's going to notice her. She's not with her dad right now. So a lot of that plays a role in it. But Noeo like notices her and gives her a lollipop. And so later on, when they're all in the back room, like, oh my God, we're sweating, it's so hot, and she comes back there, everyone panics and immediately goes back into their costumes. I was like, that is so sweet. I mean, granted, you'll probably get fired if you don't, because I'm sure like, you always have to keep up appearances, you know, like you want to keep the mysticism and the magic alive for the kids, right? But she came over and gave Noel like a drawing in them together, and even said like, oh, like, do you have, and notices the scars on her arms, those look like scars, self-harm scars. And then the one guy came in there and ruined the whole thing. He had his head off, and then she starts crying and he puts his head on, be like, oh no, it's all fine. But then dad rolls through, which I got super hyped when the dad came on, because I was like, yo, that actor's name is Lee Jin-wook. I hope I'm not butchering that. The first thing I ever saw him in was the show Bugasu Immortal Souls, and then obviously even more recently would be Sweet Home, which if you've never seen like the live action Sweet Home that's based on the webtoon manga with the same name. But I was like, because I saw that he was in the cast list. I just didn't know like what role he was going to be playing. But I was like, oh, that's super sick. That's dope. But yeah, he's an artist dad. Turns out his child has cancer. You're just like, Jesus, everything is sad and depressing. But after like kind of having no luck with the whole trying to find her sister thing, I guess maybe it's like not sister daughter situation. I think Noel like kind of just gave up because she was just like, right, she quit her job. And I figured something was up the moment. Like the little girl was like, I think her name is Nayeon, was kind of like, hey, she was looking for the bunny, but the bunny overlooked her. I was like, it's not her in the costume, is it? And it turned out not to be. It's like the very dude that ruined the magic for her the previous day. It's him in the bunny outfit. But Noeo is like quitting her job. And I guess maybe because of her circumstances later on, maybe she never works the same job. Well, no, because he said like, she's been working there for 2 years, but maybe after that, it just made it was so depressing that, and having to let go of her daughter, she probably felt like, I had to let go of everything. I can't keep this job where I'm going to be around kids because it's just going to be a constant reminder. I'm sure that might be just at the forefront of her mind about it. So she quits her job. And then we see that she calls up the number. She even burns the picture from the little girl. And that's after like the little girl collapsed, ended up going to the hospital, and she went there and dropped off her hat because the little girl's hat got left behind. So because at first you're like, oh, is she entering the games for their sake? It's like, well, I can't do anything about my own daughter's situation, but I could do something for you. And lo and behold, like the moment they got in the back of the trucks, I was like, hey, yo, I was like, oh, we changing things up now? No vans. But then she started going by people. I was like, and they weren't getting knocked out. They were dressing themselves. I was like, is she part of the games? Like, is she part of the crew? And lo and behold, she is. She's a triangle. I was like, fascinating. We got the inside look to that to some extent because obviously we would see from the frontman side of things, and even when Junho was undercover, like, you know, but like having someone fully in the know about it, like it makes you even wonder, was she at bare minimum, was she there when Gihong won the last game 3 years ago? Was she working then? I mean, at least that place that she's working at currently, she was been working there for 2 years, so maybe she's only been part of the games for 2 years. Not unless this is the first time she's taken up the, well, because she got the card now. So I don't know if they like cut ties with you and then rehire you, or this is her first time being hired at. So this might be her first job. But I mean, I guess they fill you in on the information. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see like whether she's a return, like, because I'm curious like how that works, because they don't recycle the same players. You know, it's like, right, you know, we move on to a new section of players. So I'm wondering, do they do the same thing for, I mean, to be fair, what the salesman has been doing this obviously for years. He also said he was burning bodies for years. So it's like, that's why I'm like, is this her first day on the job? Like her first time being a part of the games as a crew? Or has she been, this is her kind of, is that how the rehiring process happened? And like for them to give her the card makes me feel like, no, this ain't repeat business. This is her first time out. So very, very interesting developments. Like I said, I love that twist because because you're on the assumption like she's going to be a player. It's like I think that's beautifully done. It's like, hey, second season, we got to change things up a little bit, baby. We got to keep you on your toes, not sure. Like you think you got this figured out because the previous season was like, no, things are going to be changed. There's going to be some twists, some turns, you know? So I thought that was kind of a neat reveal, especially how that was handled. Oh yeah, really quickly, I also want to talk about something, and this plays into what I was talking about before about Gi-hoon, not sure if he was going to come back, so he was kind of making sure other things were taken care of. That's why he went to see Sang-wook's mom, and not Wook, Sang-woo's mom and Sae-byok's brother. Was like the guy he's asking to look for Sae-byok's mom. It's like he's like, if you can't get in contact with me, this is Sae-byok's brother where he stay. Contact them. Just he needs to have that connect there in case he doesn't come back. And he even tried to talk to Choi about it, but Choi's like, no, you're gonna make it through. It's gonna be fine. But they end up putting a tracker in his mouth and everything. So yeah, we're taking all the precautions for this. So ultimately, they show up at the party. It's like a Halloween party, which I should also note. I was like, Korea has Mardi Gras. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I'd assume that's just exclusively a New Orleans thing, but I mean, I guess maybe it's become an international thing too. I don't know. I always associate Mardi Gras with New Orleans, but it's like, you know, I mean, maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like that would be I guess I would say that started in New Orleans, wouldn't it? I mean, maybe it has deeper roots that I'm just not aware of. That started in another place, not necessarily Korea, but just maybe somewhere else in the world, and then just became kind of associated with New Orleans, or maybe it is, like I said, born and bred in New Orleans. Either way, I just thought that was interesting. Oh, they have a Mardi Gras parade. Obviously, it's not the same as the one in New Orleans, but still. Either way, the Halloween party. People from the game show up, the crew shows up, and they lead him away. Mr. Choi gets tasered. I was thinking like, are they gonna make him part of the game? It's like, no, they're just removing you from the situation. Junho had saw the jumpsuits and was like, right, I know who they are, what they're here for, and tries, the squad is ready. They're tailing after Gi-hoon in the limo, and him and the frontman are talking, even though it's not face to face. And so, really interesting conversation between them, where it's just kind of like, you could have led a happy life, but here you are. And Gi-hoon's just getting pissed because he's like, right, you're going to say like, people made their choices, but it's like, you took advantage of, you manipulated people who are desperate at the end. It's like, that's not, don't try and make it seem like you're doing some kind of charity. And he kind of makes the point of like, I'm going to destroy this game. He's like, he's like, you're just like, oh, Ilnam, where it's like, the guy, their final bet at the end of season 1, where he's like, you're going to, he knew that that person was going to come through in the end, and he refused to look out the window because he didn't want to recognize and realize that he had lost. He's like, kind of like the point that Gi-hoon was trying to get across there. But it's like, right, these people aren't horses. Even making the whole point later on, like, not everything in the world is going to go the way you want it to. Like, the fact is, I'm going to shatter all this. I'm going to break all of this. But, they are a well-oiled machine. They had snipers ready. They didn't kill them, but took out the vehicles that Gi-hoon's people were in. Even the vehicle Junho was in had already been tampered with. They put like an explosive at the bottom of it. So Gi-hoon was on his own. Of course, the glass to the front of the car is bulletproof, but just calmly, Gi-hoon just puts the gun down. It's like, all right, put me back in the game. He's like, that's why, it'll be more exciting, right? The VIPs will get like it's like, ooh, returning champion come to play. And that's what I'm curious about. Is Gi-hoon the first champion to ever return? Probably not. There probably have been others who've returned for various reasons, maybe similar, maybe not, who returned and then maybe died. Or it could be Gi-hoon is the first person in the history of this game to ever come back. I mean, if you've won, why would you ever do it? Whether you've gone off to live a happy life or just wanting to forget. But Gi-hoon said he can never forget everything that happened. He refuses to forget. He never will forget. So, and yeah, gets brought into the game, and it turns out the front man was in the front seat the entire time. It's like, yeah, he actually came to see you himself, interestingly enough. I wonder, I mean, he has to know his brother was there too, so. As I mean, that's why you purposely made sure to shoot your brother in the shoulder. You do still care enough about him despite your attempt at detachment that you still cared enough to try and make sure he didn't die. But just like Gi-hoon, you were like, go live your life. You had a second chance. Go live your life. Be happy with mom. Mom still has you at the very least. You got to move on. And neither one of them can. So we'll see how that all shakes up and plays out. Something I had to go back and add because I completely forgot about it until I was going through the episode again was Gi-hoon trying to call his daughter. But he couldn't bring himself to say anything. And it kind of, I guess, gives some answers to maybe like the last time he communicated with his daughter was 2 years ago when he was about to get on that plane. So I think that's probably that might be as much of an answer as we might ever get. I don't know. We'll see if that ends up coming back up. But once again, it's just he knew what was coming and trying to make peace with as much as possible and kind of make sure everything's kind of taken care of in case he doesn't make it back, because there's just as much of a possibility, motivation or not, there's still a good chance he might not come back from this regardless of the results. So just kind of want to go back and add that in there because I did not remember to talk about that. I'm excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.